your work is already done. That's how I feel when you get there, right? The hard, intense training is already done. It's all about keeping our bodies limber, keeping our bodies prepped and ready to go.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? And welcome back to another episode of Off the Mat. My name is Josh Dumoulin, and this is
Nicole Stratichuk.
And we have you back here, back from Finland. I know you've been back actually for a little bit, but I think this is the first episode we've done since you've been back, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
No. Incorrect.
Right, we did a little one last week, but this is kind of like, I think, the first official one. No, it's not the first official one. We've done one.
Yes,
All right.
we have.
I just don't know if that one's going to be up yet. So either way, doesn't matter. Either way, you're either watching this and you're back, or you've already been back and we're now doing this one. So
That's right.
all right, cool. So you are back from Finland. We haven't had a chance though to talk about the World Championships. We did a before episode where you were on your way to Finland as the Team Canada manager, going to Finland for the World Championships, and we talked a little bit about your experience as manager versus athlete heading to a competition like this. Now you've actually gone to the event. It is all over. There is nothing left for you to do in terms of the Team Canada stuff, right?
Yeah, I think there was a couple little things that I had to do when we got back, but I think I am done now.
Perfect. And how does it feel to be done everything?
Yeah,
and back and settled.
I mean, it always feels good when you accomplish a goal. So that it feels really good knowing that we went to the World Championships. I did my work and I did a good job of everything that I was in charge of. I mean, you always learn from your experience, right? So I know there's things I can do better next time, and if I do it again, I guess, and that you just learn stuff as you go. And but overall, like, I think I prepared really well. I did what I needed to do. I accomplished all of my goals going there and doing what I needed to do. So that part feels really good, that I know I did my absolute best, right? Which we talk about that all the time, is do your best. And I know I did the best that I could do. And everything turned out really good, like the things that I was in charge of or that were under my responsibility. So
Right. So like that's just it. Like that's what we talk about all the time, right? Like regardless of whether or not you know the role fully, whether you've done it before, like whatever it is that you're placed in charge of doing, just do it to the best of your ability, right? And I mean, managing organization, those aren't things that you're necessarily like new at either.
Right.
Like you're already fairly skilled when it comes to those things anyway.
Right.
You were just having to do it at a different capacity, different people,
different event,
yeah. Dealing with people that span across Canada,
yeah.
right? Whereas you're not usually dealing in one company, right? With people that you're directly in contact with face to face, you know, daily or weekly. So like definitely a few obstacles and challenges there when it comes to, you know, being in touch of parents, instructors, people, like competitors, athletes, all of these things. It's quite a bit different,
right?
A little bit, but
yeah, absolutely.
But then again, just being able to just take whatever it is that you're supposed to do and just do it to your best ability.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So before we go on to things about the event, maybe experiences and things that you learned, how was Finland as a country? The fun part, the touristy part, how was that?
Yeah, the fun parts of Finland were fun. And I would say, you know, parts of it just remind me of Canada. It's, you know, it's a northern country too. So there were similar things at that time of the year. So we went at the beginning of September and we're there for 2 weeks. That time of year.
You were saying something about like that you don't like the Finnish people, right? Like you didn't like
them.
them?
Oh my goodness. No, I think you misinterpreted that. I think that every country, you know,
that was a joke before anybody like goes on about something.
Every country, like there's a certain, the way people are, right? And Canadians, I think we have this reputation for being friendly and polite and things like that. Whereas I think the people of Finland, the Finnish, I think that's what we would call them, they're more reserved and like they just keep to themselves a little bit more. And I just remember having a few interactions with people from Finland where I was very, I wanted to ask them questions and like find out about them and have a conversation, and they wouldn't ask about me. So it was and they were quite surprised that I was asking, and not like deep personal questions or anything, but like, what do you do? What do you do for work? How do you spend your time? Like just kind of normal small talk conversations. And I just found that they're not really big on small talk, and that's okay. They were friendly enough, and yeah, really nice. Like especially at the competition, I met volunteers that through the Taekwondo community, right? Like they were nice, and it was great that way. But yeah. I feel like you misinterpreted what I said there.
You never said anything like that. I'm making a joke.
Okay.
All right. What about the actual country? Like touring around, like what was it like there?
Yeah, so some of the driving that we experienced on the highway, you kind of almost felt like you were kind of driving through maybe the mountains, except it wasn't as mountainous. But if you think about driving through BC and like just, the lots of greenery and it's beautiful. And that's kind of how I felt, especially from we landed in Helsinki and then we had to travel. It's 2 hours away by bus. And that, like, the countryside just reminds you of kind of like the mountains, not the prairies, because it was greener than that. But yeah, just beautiful. And there was times where we would go out walking or hiking and things like that. And it was cool to be in nature and just experience like kind of the differences that they have over there. So yeah, it was beautiful. Cool. Yeah. And temperature wise, like kind of the same as here. I would say it was probably a little bit cooler over there. Just I think their fall maybe starts a little bit earlier than here. So it was already kind of, mid-teens. There was a couple days where maybe it got closer to 20 degrees. But yeah, just cooler than probably it was here at that time.
Do you have a favorite thing that you did there, again, outside the competition? Like, do you have a favorite, maybe restaurants or food or something that you got to do?
So head coach Miss Merritt and I, we after the competition was over, we ended up traveling east more towards Russia actually. And when we were there, we went on a hike, which ended up being very adventurous because I didn't realize it was a 10-kilometer hike that we were going to with only packing half a bottle of water, which whole story in itself. But that was just beautiful. So we took a boat to this island, which was a national park, and going on that hike was probably one of my favorite things that we did outside of the competition, just because it was so beautiful. It was really, really beautiful, like just being in the forest and, there's a lot of water in Finland, so it is very... Yeah, like just the vegetation, like it's very thick and dense in the forest. And so it was neat hiking through that. And I know we have awesome hikes here in BC too, like in the mountains. It was just a little bit different, just the vegetation that grows there and stuff. Like it was really beautiful. And mushrooms, there is so many mushrooms there, like it just kind of magical. That's how I felt in the forest. It was just really magical to be there.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it's like Super Mario mushrooms and stuff like that.
Yeah, there is just so many different ones and different colors. And yeah, like one that looks like a Mario mushroom, the red one. I was really trying to find a blue mushroom because Ryder, when I got back, he was asking me, did you find like a blue mushroom? Because there's a blue mushroom in Mario, right? So, but I never found a blue one. There was kind of a purpley one that I found, but yeah, it was just beautiful to me. Like, I took so many pictures of just like the nature because I found it just beautiful.
Yeah, it was really cool. A lot of the pictures and videos and stuff like that we got to see. So now competition. Leading up to it, I know you guys got to, have a few days of training, right? Like 2 or 3 days of training before the actual competition. What was that like, the training piece before the event started?
I'll kind of give you just our timeline leading up to there. So we left Canada September 1st. We arrived September 2nd. That was a majority of the team. Some people had arrived earlier. They chose to do that because it helps get your sleep on track, right? We're talking a 9-hour time difference. So some people opted to go earlier, but we were all there by September 2nd and met together as a team. And that's where you start hanging out as a team, and it doesn't end until the end of the competition. So one day, September 2nd, we land in Helsinki. September 3rd, we get bussed out to Tampere, which is where the competition was held. That's 2 hours away from Helsinki. That first day, we got checked in. There was no training on that first day, but we just kind of got situated with our hotel and rest. The funny thing is, like, when you're traveling not for a competition, it's very like exciting, right? And you want to go out and do this and do that and just do a whole bunch of stuff. But when you're there for competition, athletes have to prepare their bodies, right? That is their main focus. So yeah, they did get to like walk around and see a few things, but their main focus is resting, getting food and water, getting their sleep back on track. So I kind of found like those first few days are very just focused on that, not overly exciting, because we really just needed athletes to focus on getting their bodies ready for competition, right? So that first day we didn't have any training planned just because we didn't quite know how everything was going to go. It went really smoothly, but we just had athletes focus on, and then some are cutting weight or have to maintain weight, all that kind of stuff. So that day was just purely like, let's get situated, let's get settled into our rooms as much as we can. The following day, so actually that first day, me, Miss Merritt, and I think one other coach, Mr. Homewood, we went and sought out the training facility that we had planned for the following couple days. And we had a little bit of trouble finding it because it's actually underground and it's a bunker, like a bomb shelter. And so we couldn't find it right away because we're on my map, right? And standing right over top of it. And I'm like, I don't know where we're supposed to be for this. You actually had to do quite a walk around to try and find the entrance to this thing, which we did find, which helped us out because I'm glad we didn't do that the day that we were headed over there with all the athletes and like, where do we go? So
it's pretty cool, like the whole thing.
Phenomenal. If you want to check out my Instagram, I did make a reel just about the training facility because it was so neat. Yeah. It was really neat. By far probably the coolest place like I've trained, even though I wasn't really training, but just the coolest place. And when you went down into the bomb bunker, like it's all stone and you're going underground and you go through these big steel doorways, right? Like that, those can lock up if they needed to. And the space down there, it was used all for sports. So there was probably like, I don't even know. I didn't even get to see the whole facility because it is actually like really big. And there was probably 10 or so mats, like, and what I mean is like different training spaces for martial arts. So you could tell that there were other martial arts that use this place for training, whether that's judo or karate or taekwondo or whatever. That you could just tell this was a very multi-martial arts place.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was really neat. So the space that we mainly used you could tell it was a karate facility for sure. So that was neat. So the next day we went as a team to that facility and trained. It was really cool. We had to take city transit there, which was exciting to figure out as well. And yeah, we went down into this bomb bunker and trained down there, right? And of course, training a few days before this big competition is light. People are still trying to get their weight on track. So it's not your work is already done. That's how I feel when you get there, right? The hard, intense training is already done. It's all about keeping our bodies limber, keeping our bodies prepped and ready to go. And so the training was light, and that first day was, yeah, it was awesome to be in there. And then the second day, so the day after that, we did more training, but that was also weigh-in day. So we had the weigh-in first, and then we headed back to that same training facility after the weigh-in. So people were still trying to get rehydrated and still very light training, but it was awesome, just that experience of training in a bomb bunker. So
What would you say, like, seeing people now from this view, not being dealing with your own personal, whether it's like weight maintenance or training and those things as an athlete, what would you say as an observer, seeing what was the feeling like in the room from the other athletes? Like, was it tense? Was it, could you feel the stress in the room from people? Were you able to, did you have to calm nerves with certain people? Did you have to be there? Did you have to leave people alone? Like, what was sort of the feeling as an observer in that room with all of those athletes from Canada?
yeah, I would say the first day of training it was more nerves on that first day, just because the weigh-in was the next morning, right? So there's a little bit of nerves just over just doing the weigh-in. So I knew that was happening, but overall, yes, there was nerves, but not overly excited nerves yet. I would say everyone was just kind of excited to be there and finally get to move and train a little bit more than they had. Because I feel like traveling that far of a distance, your body is almost craving to kick around and move around like that. So, and some might have done some on their own. But as a group, it was, I think, comforting in a lot of ways, just to be with your team and kicking around and doing what you know, and just revisiting, all your training and trying to have it all come together. And of course, there is some nerves going on, especially that first one for the weigh-in day. But overall, I would say people were excited. It was comforting to be on the mat, I think.
Cool.
Yeah, that's what I would say.
And then tournament day starts. The event has begun. What starts first? Is it pattern sparring, board breaking, a mix,
A
team?
mix.
Like what's kind of going on? Like, who was our Canadian first athletes to go?
Yeah, it was all individual stuff first. And the interesting thing about what my job was, so Miss Merritt, in our first episode there, we talked about, like, we had a whole schedule of who was going when, and who was in charge of coaching who. And my job when we got there was, at the competition, I was in the back room. And that was the interesting thing, is that I got to watch the competition throughout the 4 days of the event, but a lot of my time was spent in the back room, where the warm-up room is, and is huge, right? Like, there's tons and tons of space back there. But I watched a lot of the competition from screens, and not like live screens, but of the scoring screens. So they had them all set up back there. And so my job was just to, like, keep an eye on who's warming up, what time are they going, where's their coach. And I was kind of like the main coordinator between everybody, making sure that I knew where the athletes were, I knew where the coaches were. I was watching the other matches to make sure that timing was all good that way, and helping athletes in the back. Like, if they were getting nervous or overwhelmed, like, just being there as a support for them in the back. That was my main thing. And the first day, the first 3 days was all individual events, and it was quite all over the place. So there was patterns, sparring, and breaking happening all three of the first 3 days. So it was kind of all over the place. But yeah.
Cool. And then, so as far as athletes in the back, so you're kind of there getting to see them before they go.
Yes.
What was did you find, like, anything common between a lot of athletes? Like, you know do they chat? Do they mingle? Do they keep to themselves? Do they jump up and down? Do they have to kick? Do they lay down and nap? Like, what did you find something sort of common in terms of like the athletes that you got to kind of see and hang out with?
I would say because we had 38 athletes, most of them were first timers. So like first timers going to the world championships. So
They don't quite know what to do.
yeah, in general, I would say that there was maybe a little just of uncertainty. Not to say that they didn't prepare that part, but it is, especially the first day, I found was a little bit nerve-wracking for all athletes, just because we didn't quite know how it was all going to go. I mean, we have a general idea that what time they're going and all of that kind of stuff.
Well, and they've done a tournament. They know the layout. They know what happens. But
yeah, but I would say like generally there was a lot of nerves because they've never done this before. They might have their warm-up routine, but it is a lot of guessing because we don't know exactly what time they're going to go. More often than not, they're maybe a little bit later than their expected time, but some of them were going a little bit earlier than their expected time. So yeah, I would just say generally uncertainty is kind of what I felt overall. Just not knowing, right? Is that their first time? Now, some of those athletes were experienced world championship competitors. So those ones that have done it before, they definitely had more calmness about them than the first timers. And I think that's part of experience, right? So yeah, you could definitely tell the ones that have done this high of level competition before and the ones that hadn't. Just the energy in the back overall, even not because it's not just Canada, it's all of the countries warming up in one big space. And so the energy back there, you would see it kind of go in waves, right? Because there'd be certain groups up or certain people up or certain countries up, and you'd kind of see waves in the energy go through. So there's smaller countries there and smaller delegations there, so when it was kind of like their warm-up time, the energy you would see like kind of dip because just less people in there. But then you'd have bigger delegations in there getting ready, getting warmed up, like Argentina or Norway, or like just bigger groups of people. And so you would kind of see the energy go up and down, and that was really neat to see in the back. And it was really cool just to watch all the other countries get warmed up, and especially by the fourth day we're doing more team events now, so it was cool to watch all the teams get warmed up together, especially team patterns. It was really neat to watch it from there. Like I said, a lot of my time was spent in the back, and in the back they have the screens, but the screens are just showing the scores of the current match, and there's a little bit of a delay from the floor to the screens in the back, but not much. I'm talking like 20 seconds maybe. But it'd be funny at some matches, like because we couldn't go out onto the floor and you had to stay there if you were going to be up soon, right? Because you kind of wait in that area until you're ready to go out onto the floor, because they'd had ushers that would take you out there. But there would be certain matches that were going up, and that well-known fighters or well-known patterns people or whatever, but we'd all be standing around a screen like waiting to see what the score was. And so you would kind of hear like cheers out from the floor, and we were like, woo, I don't know if that's like a good cheer or a bad cheer for whatever countries were kind of surrounding the screen. And then all of a sudden the score would change on the screen in the back, and the countries would be like cheering or kind of thing. So that was a cool thing to be in the back, because it was just as exciting sometimes in the back, even though we were just looking at numbers on a screen. Just the energy of countries really cheering for each other and being excited for their teammates. Like, that's a really cool thing that I got to kind of be a part of back there. So that was neat.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. There's one thing that I kind of always found interesting, like when you go to that sort of caliber. But for you, again, being able to watch this, not as an athlete, everybody who goes to an event like this, chances are they're good. Like they're not the worst in their country. Their chances are they're the best in that division in their country.
Right.
So I've always thought of it this way, like even the worst person at the World Championships, and take that however you want, but the worst person at the World Championships is still pretty good.
Yes.
Like everybody there is decent and qualified and can perform. They're there. They're at that level. They're at that caliber. So they do possess some talent. They do possess some skill. But what is a character trait maybe that you noticed with the athletes who won and maybe the athletes who lost? Because again, when you're watching some of these people who win, a lot of times in terms of technique, they're not that much better than some of the other people there. But there's some reason why that person maybe wins more or advances farther along. Anyway, I hope that makes sense. And it looks like you have something to answer on that. So that's good.
100% the answer is their head game is so strong. Like, they understand the game, right? You're going to a competition. It is a game. They understand that they are the player and they have to perform in order to win the match. Mm-hmm. And I think just being somewhat of a newer team, that head game wasn't as strong simply because they have not experienced that before, right? Whereas the ones that did from Canada or just any country, the ones that won, you could tell there was like a demeanor about them. They're just looking at them, you could see that their head game was just so strong and they understood that they were there to do a job and just make it happen.
That's right.
Yeah. So there is that difference, especially for, I don't know, I would say that for all events, especially for sparring. I feel like because that is very dependent on your partner too. But you could just tell the fighters there were constantly just running through the scenarios in their head. But even the patterns people, they were constantly going through their patterns performance in their head, or just their head game was just so strong. And now I don't know what all of their preparation looked like for that, but there was just a presence about them. Mm-hmm. You knew the champions before they became champions almost, right? Like you could just, you sense something about them. And that's what I would say it is just their head game was really, really strong. Mm-hmm. So
could you, like, you could almost see before they went up, yeah, that person's going to go either, all the way, or they're going to advance farther. Could you tell on the flip side, could you also tell the people who were making it first round and that was probably it?
Yes. Just again,
and this isn't a Canada thing. This is anybody like
not
in
just
general.
Canada, but anybody in general. You could tell, the nerves were getting the best of them already before even getting out there. So that again is experience, right? And comes down to like putting yourself in situations where you are forced to handle those nerves and handle the stress and handle the anxiety. So you could tell just across the board of all countries, you could tell the experienced ones and the non-experienced or less headstrong competitors there. Like, it was just something you could see about the way they carried themselves or the way they warmed up or the way they prepared or the way they spoke or the way they stood. There was just something about it you could sense.
That's what I always find interesting is, like, when you look at the room on the surface and you watch everybody's always talented, like they're skilled, like there's so, like you can just be like, wow, like look at that kick, like look at that side kick, man, I wish I could spin like that, I wish I could jump like that, I wish I could break like that, I wish I could hold my moves like you're always looking, and like on the surface it's like always they're so talented. And especially people like maybe parents coming in and they're looking and they're like, well, like, of course your kid's talented. They made it there.
Yeah.
Right? They're skilled.
Yeah.
But where's their head at?
Yeah.
Like, what did they actually do to prepare for the event? They spent some time on the mat and they trained and they sparred for sure. Yeah, but really, what did they do? And there's a combination. Experience plays a big role in that, but also what you're gonna do, like leading up to it. You know, like what exactly are you preparing with? Like, how are you preparing? Twice a week, 3 days a week? Yes, you've got the talent, you got the skill, you got the kicks, all of that stuff, but
yeah, what are you doing to
it's
train
almost
your head?
shown really what you did on the mat, literally on that floor, on that mat, in those rings. Everything's exposed. Like, that's what I always find interesting about competition, is those weaknesses are exposed, and it's demonstrated right there. You didn't put in as much time as you claimed or you thought,
Yeah.
right? And I have felt like that. That's why I say this. Like, I have actually experienced this, where I have gone thinking, I'm so prepared, I'm so ready. I'm so ready for this. I have trained so much. And then you get there and you kind of get your butt handed to you, and you're like, you have to come to the realization, like, maybe I didn't prepare
Yeah.
as much as I thought I did. Maybe I didn't do quite as much as I should have. Maybe I should have gone to the extra classes or put in that hour that I didn't really have anything going on, but I decided not to go to the gym.
Yeah.
Like, I've done that. Like, that's why, again,
Certainly.
like, I'm not
Of course.
criticizing anybody. I just know that's what's happened, right? So, cool. That's, yeah.
Yeah, it was overall just really neat to be in the back where I was, because you saw all of that play out, right? And even the like you said, everybody there is talented, and you'd see some people warming up. You know they're talented because they're there, and they'd be messing up weird things, right? Like things, I don't know. If they're practicing patterns, they're messing a move, or they're practicing power breaking. I saw someone practicing power breaking, not from Canada, but a different country, and they just totally. It was like they had two left feet all of a sudden, and they couldn't figure out their steps, or maybe it was specialty breaking. But it was just odd to see not odd, but almost sad that, their nerves, you could see the nerves getting a hold of some of those athletes, and they couldn't work themselves through that. And luckily for us as Canada, there were times where some of our athletes were maybe experiencing some nerves or performance anxiety or whatever it was, that they were frightened to like go out onto the mat. And because I was kind of stationed in the back, it was nice that I could be available for them to, give them a pep talk if they needed it, or whatever they needed, right? Like, find them a warm-up partner. I could do that for them. Whatever they needed, I was kind of just there to make sure they had what they needed, make sure they had all of the stuff that they needed for competition, and at least that those things didn't have to get in the way of their performance, right? So, yeah, it was kind of interesting position for me. So,
Yeah, that's really cool. What would you? So for someone who wants to go to that level, what would you say if you were to give them like a blueprint? Like, somebody came to you today. Do you have any advice on, if you were just to lay out a plan? I come to you today, World Championships is in a year, 2 years, whatever. And I say, I want to go to the World Championships. That's my goal. That's my thing. That's what I want to do. I want to experience that. What would you say is a blueprint of a few? And it doesn't have to be a full detailed plan, because that could be a whole episode in itself, right? But if you were to have a few do's and don'ts of advice again, taking what you saw from the people who won, maybe I don't have that same experience that they have, but that doesn't always mean that you can't go there and perform well. There's definitely something that some people do to prepare differently. So what would you say are some do's and don'ts if you had to just top of your head think of a few things?
Well, one thing that comes to mind right away is if you want to be a world champion, then right now you start acting like a world champion, you start training like a world champion, you start eating like a world champion, you start thinking like a world champion. If you want to be a world champion, I want you to think about that person on the gold medal podium and what do they do? And if you don't know, we are so connected now, like from back when I was competing, back as a 17-year-old going to world championships trying to be the world champion. We are so connected now that it becomes a lot easier to figure out what the things that the champions are doing. You can find them on social media. You can reach out to them directly. Maybe they're willing to answer a few questions for you. Maybe you can find an opportunity to train with people that are world champions and things like that. So but I would just get your mind in that world champion mindset. Like you can't be a world champion if you're not training like one, if you're not eating like one, if you're not thinking like one, if you're not acting like one, if you're not doing the things that world champions do, you will not be a world champion. So that's my first thing, is start thinking about all of that stuff. When you're having a day where you don't want to go train, you don't want to do your workout, you want to skip out, you want to go for a Big Mac at McDonald's, I want you to think, if you want to be a world champion, are those the actions that a world champion would take? No, right? So hold yourself accountable. If you want to be a world champion, cool, that's awesome. But realize that there's a whole lot of work that goes into being that world champion, and you need to do those things. And if you're not willing to put in the blood, sweat, and tears, then you're not ready to be a world champion. That's just what it is. And that's okay. Like if you're not ready to put in that work, then you're not ready to be a world champion, and that's okay.
Right. We've actually talked about that
Yeah.
before with sacrifice, right? Like if you're, that's fine. Not everybody's willing to do that, but the ones who are going to
I think
reap those.
Overall, sometimes we underestimate what it takes to be a world champion, or what it takes to go to an international competition, not even world championships. Like you underestimate what it takes to hold your place on the mat, right? So start thinking and acting and training and eating like the champion that you want to be. I'm saying that, and I mean, there's been times too where I haven't done all my workouts, right? Or I haven't eaten what I was supposed to eat, or all of that stuff. And it just holds you back. So you're your own worst enemy, right? We hear that, right? So yeah, that would be my biggest thing, is like, if you want to be a world champion, you start acting like one today and build from there. Other things I would say is like, get out of your comfort zone in all different kinds of ways. So, I mean, you have your instructor, which has propelled you to where you are right now, but look for other opportunities to train either with world champions or world level coaches, or get different expertise from the different experts out there. Those things would be really important. And then the biggest thing, this goes along with the first thing obviously, but is getting your head game so strong, because that was the biggest thing I noticed. Like I could almost see the world champions over the non-world champions there, right? Is just that there was a presence, there was just an energy about them that they were ready mentally. That mentally they were ready to be there.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, there's the short blueprint for you to do. But that I like that. Just see, I think of it this way when I'm thinking about, business or as an instructor. I almost actually, like, for me, I picture that person in the room with me, And every time I want to pick up that, like, extra fruit snack, or
Yeah.
that extra, like, I haven't eaten yet. Do I want to go into a drive-through? That person that I admire literally sits in my passenger seat, and he's like, really, really dumb. That's what you
Right.
want to have? And then, yeah, you're right. I don't like I don't need that. I don't want that. Every time I want to sit and do nothing, like, that person sits there with me and goes, really? You could be doing this and you're going to do that? So, like, I like that you see that, and you see, who do you want to be like? Well, what steps are they taking?
So one thing, like, you have to remember that your opponents, one thing that I heard when I was younger is that when you're sleeping, your opponents are training. And I always held that with me. So, and what that meant to me is, like, I had to stay hungry. I had to want it so bad and train so hard and just do everything that I could possibly do if I wanted to be a world champion, right? When I'm sleeping, my opponents are training. So I need to keep that in mind. Like, I need to have this as, like, the forefront of everything. Like, if you want to be world champion, that has to be a priority for you. So I remember that. The other thing that I heard, I think my instructor, Mr. Murphy, would have said this to me a lot, because I was dealing with nerves and anxiety and all that stuff trying to perform. And one thing that he did say to me that has always stuck with me is that my opponents also put their pants on one leg at a time. So even though I held these world champions to, like, the highest level, and, like, I was always, like, striving to be at that level, I also knew that these world champions, they also put their pants on one leg at a time, which meant I can also be a world champion, right? So it was like this balance between knowing that I could and putting the work in to make sure I could. Is kind of balancing those two thoughts in your head, right? Is like, yeah, these world champions are way up here, but I am also able to be up there because we're all human.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, that was really good. We're all glad to have you back, and the experience was good. I always love hearing some of the stories, and we've been watching, like, the one night when you first came back, first or second night, and we just had, like, hours of pictures and videos and everything that we were going through, and you were showing the boys and everything. So it was all awesome stuff. So
Yeah. One last thing though is, like, when I did get to watch the competition, because there would be times where I could go out onto the main concourse there. I spent a lot of time, like, I would take, like, a video of just, like, panning around the auditorium, because the energy there is so crazy. Like, I couldn't even hardly take a video of just one ring. There's 9 rings going on at the same time, which was awesome, because, like, everywhere you looked, there was something exciting to watch. But, like, the energy in there is just crazy. Like, the stands are full. People are cheering. People are chanting. There's groups of people, like, jumping up and down and, like, doing their country's chant, and Canada did it too. And it's just really cool that we're all there to compete with one another, but there's so much respect for all the athletes amongst each other as well. And that's just really, really cool to be, like, just talking about it, like, gives me goosebumps, because it is just such a special experience to have. And that piece of it, that didn't change for me being an athlete versus being a coach or manager, right? Like, I felt that, like, either role, right? Like, it's just so undeniable when you're there, just, like, the energy of that room. So it is worth it 100%.
That's awesome. Well, anyway, guys, we hope that you guys enjoyed this episode. If you guys did enjoy it, and you guys maybe picked up a lesson or two, because there was definitely a few things I really enjoyed from that. So if you guys have anything that somebody might need to hear from this episode, and they could maybe benefit from some of the lessons that were shared here, please share it with them. Share it on social media. And if you have a chance, subscribe to us on YouTube. Give us a review. course, 5-star. We love that one. But you know what? Either way, we're happy just to hear your feedback and everything from it. We thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of Off the Mat. My name is Josh Dumlin, and this is
Nicole Stratichuk.
And we will see, or you'll listen to us later.
Bye, guys.